Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Joshua Suliruka here, your host of the Impact Podcast Show. And I just want to mention two things before we introduce our next special guest on the Impact Podcast Show. And the first thing I would like to say is I would like to say thank you. I want to say thank you to those who are listening to this episode either on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I also want to say thank you to those that are watching this podcast through our YouTube channel. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you guys like this video if you have received any value whatsoever. And make sure you guys comment your thoughts. If you guys got any thoughts or any questions that you'd like to ask myself or the special guest on the other side, make sure you put it down in the comments down below. And guys, make sure, most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you click on that bell button for the latest updates to our next video. And so that was the first thing that I wanted to mention. But the second thing that I want to mention before we introduce our next special guest, I would like to state our mission, and our mission is simple. Our mission is to focus on impacting the one. So if you are impacted by this podcast, I encourage you to share this to someone else that can benefit from this podcast. And guys, just remember, it only takes one person to change someone's life, and that could possibly be you. And that will be cool. But guys, enough with all the shenanigans that I just mentioned. Okay, I needed to put that in before I started. But guys, I cannot wait to get into this podcast episode. But before I do introduce our next special guest on the Impact Podcast Show, I want to share a bit of a story on how I was able to meet this lovely lady on the other side. Not only is she on the other side of this call, she's actually on the other side of the country. So she's going to share a bit more about that. But I want to share a bit of story about who this person is and why I actually got them on the podcast show. So funny enough, I was on Twitter. Right, I was on Twitter at this time, and all I was doing was I was just scrolling through, and I ended up seeing this. I guess it was her page on Twitter, and it was a very honestly. I felt like there was a bit of salt. I feel like there was a bit of saltiness in her, and obviously we're going to discover more about that. But I guess the reason why I kind of resonated with our special guest is that I loved the concept and the why behind the what. She names herself SippingKoko, and that's kind of like her brand, and she focuses on blogs. Like, she likes putting blogs out there for the Pasifika people. But I can see so much kind of connection and relatability that we have together, and so I wanted to get her on here because by the time of this launching, it will be actually 1 year since we started the Impact Podcast Show. And I know for her and her brand, it's been 1 year too. So I was like, what a coincidence to have it on here. But most importantly, the actual reason why I wanted to get her on here is to actually say thank you to her for being one of the, the main followers. I'm still following us on our journey here today. So I know that she knows where I was the first time and where I've come now. And it's crazy because we actually haven't even met. This is the first time we've actually connected, and so I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed to actually have a conversation with her, to get her on the Impact Podcast Show to share her story, because I truly believe that this story that she's going to share is going to impact you, and it's also going to help us impact the one. And so, guys, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome on the Impact Podcast Show our next special guest, Aynsley Broom.
Hello. So excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, I cannot wait to get into our conversation because I know it's going to be really good. I was already thinking about it before, like especially this morning. And so, guys, if you guys don't know, she's actually in the US, and I think it's like 7:30 or something like that, or 7:18. Yeah. So it's roughly around there, and it's like 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning in Australia. So I'm so grateful, my sister, for taking out the time. I know that time is valuable. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm loving this. Like, I love being able to connect. Like, internet has been amazing. Social media. I love that it's been able. I always say, like, our ancestors navigated the waves, but we're navigating the waves of the internet, and so like that's what I love. Yeah.
Come on.
Like, I'm sure I heard that from somebody else. It's not mine originally, but that's like what I love to say ever since I've heard it, or the concept of it is that like ancestors navigate the waves and we navigate the waves of the ocean. I mean, of the internet. So yeah.
That's so cool. I actually love that. I'm gonna take that. I'm just gonna take a bit of
go
that. I'm
ahead.
gonna keep that
You
in
can
my
have
head.
that. It's for everybody. I mean, we're all like future ancestors. I have a friend who was like always talks about us being future ancestors. So yeah, share it with everyone.
Yeah, cool. Well, in saying that, the one thing I like to do is I like to get the special guests to introduce themselves because, there may be people in your circle or in your influence that may be listening to this, but we do have the Impact community listening to this too. So, do you mind, if possible, sharing a bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Aynsley Broom. I am now currently in Nashville, Tennessee, but I grew up in Paragould, Arkansas, which is a tiny, tiny town in the South here in the United States. So I guess you say for my journey, it all started when my mom left Samoa and moved to New Zealand and met my dad, who is a Palangi New Zealander, and they moved to the States and had my sister and I. And so we grew up not really knowing our culture at all. I don't speak the Samoan language, unfortunately, learning. And learning. And so, most of my life I was proud to be Samoan, didn't really know what it meant though, until a few years ago when I went to my cousin's wedding. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm Samoan. I love being able to experience the culture. And then a cousin called me plastic. And I was like, what? And so that kind of is like where I think that's probably where the spark began, like the need and the want to learn our culture, because my mom raised me to be a fighter. And so I was, anytime we've ever gone through stuff in life, she's like, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And so for me, my doing about it was starting to blog to where I'm going to know more. I may not know the language, but I'm going to know more about our culture than you do, because language is this aspect of it, but it's not the feel, it's not the vibes, it's like, and so that's kind of like where the spark began. And so that's kind of like the past few years I've been on a journey, and last year's when I finally decided to start a blog.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's
amazing. Like I love that. I love that you, like, obviously growing up, your cousin ended up calling you plastic.
Yeah, I know. It's a thing, man. Like,
no, it is. And like, this is the thing. I think, just adding to what you were saying, like, I think a lot of people that isn't within the culture, even the Pasifika culture, they don't realize that there are people out there that don't really know their culture. And so whenever they come, like, I know when I was in school, people thought that I was, because like I'm Tongan and Māori. So, they'll come up to me and be like, oh yeah, you know how to speak it. Yeah. And like, I was so insecure because I actually didn't know how to speak it, right? Or even Māori, like people be like, oh, you're New Zealander. And so they had this expectation that, oh my gosh, like you should know, when it's like, I don't really know. And it's obviously based on, personal reasons. But it's like, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that don't really understand, especially in the Pacific culture, that like not a lot of us know exactly, the language, the culture. And some of us have to go on that journey. And I guess you're on that journey right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of what I've been talking about recently a lot too, is the fact that like we have to stop saying plastic, because in a way, and I get it's a joke, but at the same time, for those of us who didn't get the chance or didn't have the opportunity, we didn't get to make that choice. Yeah. It's kind of it's a discouragement in a way. A lot of friends that I have here in the States who they're like, yeah, I didn't learn the culture as well, and because of it, like people said stuff and I just don't care anymore. And so in a way, we're basically committing cultural suicide. And, by like, jokes, we all know jokes hurt. We all joke with our families. If you're in a Polynesian family, you've got to have thick skin or else you're just not going to survive.
100%, 100%.
Like, that's why I'm always worried about like just dating a Palangi boy here in the States. Cause I'm like, bro, if you meet my family, are you going to make it?
Yeah.
So, so I mean, I kind of advocate the stop using the word plastic and have more of an understanding and a teacher's mindset. Now, if someone is in our community who's like right out, like internally racist, let's just call them out on that and like set them straight, because there's no need for that. We already deal with a lot of other. Yeah. Are we allowed to cuss on this?
It's totally fine. All good.
Okay, there's a lot of shit that we deal with. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like, it was so cool that you mentioned plastic because I'm like, man, I feel like I'm the most plastic, like Tongan Māori guy out there. But the cool thing about us, the one thing I can resonate with you about, about this word plastic is that as much as we were called plastic, or as much as we were called like you're not a real, you're not a real, Samoan lady, or for me, it's like a Tongan man or a Māori, guy. What we are doing is we're learning. We're actually taking the time out to learn. We're on a journey. I'm still on the journey too. Like I'm still in a journey of discovering my culture, and like my partner, she's Samoan, so and she's really heavily involved in the culture. So like she helps me to understand like you probably need to learn your culture, but she's not like calling me plastic. And so I guess the cool thing that we can connect with is that we're actually doing something about this. Like we're actually doing something about kind of being called plastic. And is that like, would you say that that's kind of what started your blog? Because I did hear that you mentioned that was one of the things that helped you to blog. Is that something that helped you out?
Yeah, so that was actually one of my first, I could say, like big blogs that like went off because I actually, and I might say this wrong, Messina Samoa, the business she actually asked if she could repost it on her site. So I'm grateful to her for helping me get a lot of my stuff off the ground. And so that got posted because my cover art for that was plastic and the L was spelt with a middle finger in the air. And so, I guess like my concept was, if you're offended by the middle finger, that's how I feel when you call me plastic.
Oh, wow.
Like that's how, So like, I was like, if this offends you, well, that's how I feel when you say plastic to me. And so I was fortunate enough that some people especially moms, reached out to me saying like, yeah, I grew up not knowing the language and I'm like, or the culture. And I'm like worried about my kids because I want them to know and I'm taking them back. And so it's just cool to hear the stories that people talk about because what they're doing with their children is what I want to do with my future kids is like, I didn't get to grow up. So I'm going to have to reinvigorate the next generation. So that's like my mission in a way, is trying to like make sure that the bridge is not collapsing, that there's still a structure there connecting us to our culture, no matter where we're at.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I guess another question I wanted to ask you is like, you mentioned about cultural suicide. Did you want to kind of share and elaborate on that for those because, there might be some people listening being like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah. So that's just something I just came up with on a whim right now. But that's just kind of how I view it is like, when we're basically battling each other all the time about what's really being Samoan or what's really being Tongan or Maori, what is that? And to be honest, like if you even go to I feel like sometimes when I just go to Samoa, the people in Samoa, they're just like, we want to help you learn, or we want to help you they'll teach you something. But if you're like in Australia or New Zealand or even here in the States, we have to deal with colonization so much that we hold it so close to each other that we even hate on ourselves. And so that's like internal cultural suicide because we're going to judge each other on how Samoan we can be. When really, if the blood is literally running through your veins, you are Samoan. Like the idea that you're not enough is a colonizer's mindset. And that's something we have to get rid of. It's not something that we need to keep around because that's not how I don't feel like that's how our people are. Like we're more loving than hating, but yet we hate so much on each other when it comes to being enough.
Yeah, that is so true, honestly. Like, I love where the podcast is going because I didn't plan it to have to go this way, but this is like, to me, like what I believe, like if I had someone talking about this when I was younger, like I would be in a totally different space, I would say now. Like I'll probably be more culturally in depth in terms of my own culture if I got this a lot earlier. But obviously, time, obviously there's a reason why things happen, things happen like this. But like the good thing is, like I'm so grateful that I get to learn now because I'm on the same page as you. Like I'm wanting to learn my culture, so I'm able to teach my future kids because the last thing I want them to go through is what we went through.
Yeah, because I would hate for my thing is I just don't want to see my children go see their cousins and their cousins be like, oh, you're plastic or you're not really Samoan. Like, yes, you are. Like, you are Samoan. You can be this person. And like, I know talking with some friends, they're just like, I just don't feel like when they grew up here, like in the States or wherever, they're like, I just don't feel it. And it's because they didn't get to connect. And
Yes.
I feel like I'm on a rush. Like, I'm only 27, but I feel like I'm literally trying to like binge our culture, like not just Samoan, but like, you know, living in like some people in Australia or New Zealand, they know like all the islands. Like they know the Samoan, they can switch from Samoan dance to Tongan dance and like that. And I'm just like, I'd love that.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to be able to do that. Like, cause like I'll post on TikTok like something, and I hated when I did this, but there was like my favorite like versions of like the island teams going at each other doing like the Sipi Tau or the Siva Tau is the Tongan versus Samoa, and I put Sipi or Sipa Tau versus Sipi Tau, and I'm not Tongan, so I was like, oh, crap, I can't believe I put this out there. So I was like, you know what, I gotta take it down, redo it. And I was like, I just wish I had that like flow to where I could like jive in between each culture and know it well enough to like educate other people about it, because that's what I'd love to do, is educate others so that they're not appropriating our cultures.
Even just to add into what you're saying, I think also it would be good to have like people to go to of the different culture to be like, hey, did I say it right? Like, did I do it right? Because like, I'm going to be real straight. Like, this is like all part of impacting the one. I feel like there are people out there listening to this right now that can really resonate on what we're actually talking about. And I guess one thing I would kind of give in terms of a solution to these plans is like, I know for sure that must have been very uncomfortable for you, like to do a TikTok and knowing that like, oh, I actually stuffed up. And it's crazy because I'm just going to be real here. I know that some people may get offended by this, but I'm just stating facts, and I'm only wanting to share the truth out there. I do believe that there are people out there, and it's actually our own people who are going to judge us the most. Like, they're probably going to judge us the most. Like, you're going to probably have a Tongan person be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, she said it wrong. But what we should be doing instead is we should be actually saying, you know what, hey sis, like, I just realized that you end up getting this word wrong, but it's this word. You know, just having people that you can reach out to be like, hey, before I post it up, is this right? And like having someone to check in, because honestly, that will be the biggest game changer to being like, obviously building up your self-confidence and building like self-esteem to actually be like, okay, I'm actually confident enough to put it out there, because I do feel like there are many people out there that want to express their culture, but the one thing that they're worried about is being judged by their own people.
Yeah, and I've like seen that in 2 different videos I've posted. Like, I posted that one, and someone was like, "What's a Sipa Tau?" And I was like, ugh. And then like on another video, I posted like the evolution of like the All Blacks doing the haka, and someone was like, "Hey, like it's kind of pronounced like this." And then I even said Mulry with like an L, like it rolled off wrong. I'm still trying to get that correct. I feel like I'm always messing it up. And someone was like, hey, like they were like, hey sis, like you kind of said with an L, next time kind of do it this way. And I was like, I appreciate that so much. 100. Like that just like level of like, you know, just chill and just being like, hey, like I know you're trying, just try to do this next time.
Honestly, like those are the people that I like to connect with a lot more. Like I like to be a lot more around them, because they're actually doing because they care, whereas there's people out there that will just tell you the truth because they are wanting to meet some sort of significance inside of them. Like they're wanting to feel a lot more superior by telling you, hey, you got it wrong. And so once they feel like your emotion's been drawn down, then their emotion goes up and they're like, you know what, I actually feel good. I feel good about it, knowing that I made someone feel bad or made them feel sad.
Yeah. I like, you know, there's just... I just can't. Yeah, you basically said it right. Yeah. So, like I'm so grateful that we've started off having this conversation, because we're actually going to get more into that later in depth when Aynsley starts to share about her
her journey into starting SippingKoko and also where she's going to go in the end. So that will be at the end of the podcast. But in terms of the stage that we're going to go into right now, the one thing I believe in is that before the glory, there is always a story. And one thing I'm really passionate about is actually hearing people's stories, but also allowing them to share. So that's the platform that we utilize the Impact Podcast Show for, is to share this story. And so we're going to go on a journey on learning a bit more about Aynsley, and you guys get the exclusive story on who she is and why she does what she does to this day. And I guess the first question I would love to ask you, sis, is could you kind of share a bit about your upbringing, like kind of like more in depth about your upbringing? Because I know that you mentioned it before, like in your introduction, but I want to know more about your upbringing and growing up.
Yeah. So growing up, I grew up in I always say this, I grew up in a predominantly white town, very small. It's actually known as a sundown town in the States. And so what that means is that if you're Black, then you need to get out of there before sundown.
True.
Yeah. And so there used to, like, I was told in Paragould, there used to be signs around town that was like, hey, like, this is a sundown town, or some sort of warning or whatever. And so, like, that was interesting. I never, to be honest, like, growing up, I never really experienced like extreme racism. It was more of like microaggressions, but I didn't know what a microaggression was until like basically now, when I look back on my life and reflect on it. But yeah, growing up, and like, also my mom, nobody messes with Tonga Broom. So nobody in town, like, everyone loves her, but they also know not to mess with her.
Come on.
I think that's like another thing. And so I grew up pretty white.
Yeah.
So, as you can tell how I talk. And so, yeah, I didn't really know much about the culture. I played basketball throughout my years. My sister, there was probably one other person of color at our school who was older. And then after that, it was just me and my sister, really. And we're half. So we're Afakasi. And I mean, it was great. I always felt weird, though, like in school. Like, I always felt like there was just something missing. But it was always when, like, at 16, we went to this town in Missouri called Branson. So if you look it up, it's like a mini Las Vegas for retirement people and families. Yeah. And there had an island fire show is what it was called. And it was done by Samoans. And they, like, basically we adopted some of the, like, kids that became like our family. Like, we still are connected with them and go up to Missouri almost every year to see them. And so when I was with them, I felt like myself. I felt like me. Yeah. And that's like, was a weird feeling, and I could never really explain it. And so, like, growing up, anytime I was around other islanders, I just felt like myself. Like, I felt like happy in my skin. Whereas, like, when I was with my, like, white friends, I was always just kind of like, I gotta be this person, and I can't breathe, and I just have to, like, keep up this appearance. But when I'm with, like, other Pasifika people, I'm like, I can be my loud, proud, like, I can, like, joke, I can say this, and they would get it. Like, sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but when I would go see my cousin, when I finally actually got to meet my cousins and we all hung out together, we never really talked growing up. Like, we would email, that's the old, but we would email, and it was like here and there. But when we got to be adults and actually, like, be in person hanging out, I was more in touch with them than I was my best friend since, like, high school.
Yeah, wow.
And so, yeah, it's just like this crazy thing that, like, our ancestors really are with us no matter what age we are. And you could be disconnected from us, but if you go to the islands or you go see your family, you will feel that instant connection. I just believe that. And so, yeah, and, like, college was basically the same. Like, I feel like now as I've gotten older and, like, been more in the community and whatnot, my childhood and kind of, like, early adulthood is kind of a blur of, like, being lost. Yeah. And now I'm able to, like, meet people and, like, jive with them on the culture and stuff. And I feel more found, I guess you could say, as a person. So
that's actually crazy.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, that's actually so crazy because, like, just by listening to what you were saying, so you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that when you were with your family, as in, like, your Pasifika family, like, you were a lot more yourself, but when you're with your, as I would say, like, your Palangi,
Palangi.
friends, right? That's when you're like kind of like not yourself, like in terms of like culturally or like bubbly.
Yeah, like I'm pretty bubbly with them. Like they know I'm that like loud friend. Like I'll say what I want to say. I'll interrogate their boyfriends to make sure that they are treating them right, that kind of thing. So like they know that's who Aynsley is. But it was almost like, there are times where I was like, I have to rein Aynsley in. But like when I'm with my family, like Aynsley can be on full like display, like she can be who she wants to be, like that kind of thing.
That's actually so crazy. Like, I just realized, and it's funny, I just realized now on the podcast that was something that I had, like, so what you're sharing right now is what I had, but it was the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, so I just realized that just now. Like, so for me, like, just to share briefly, like, and I'm like, this is so cool that we're actually talking about this because I'm starting to learn a lot more about, like, my upbringing too. Like, for me, I wasn't really myself when I was with my own family. Like, I was really kind of a bit subtle and like not really being myself. But then when it came to my friends, I was a lot more myself. Like I was a lot more free, which is crazy because that was what you were, but it was the opposite. Like you were a lot more free and a lot more like yourself with your family. But when it came to your Palangi friends, like it was a completely different story. Like you're not as thing. I'm like, that is so crazy. Like that's so crazy how we end up having that shift.
Yeah, I think, I think part of it also too is due to the fact that I grew up in like what's known as the Bible Belt of the States. And so like you have to be like this person. Like you have to be like, super, like, especially women, you have to be like submissive and like all dainty and like, and like, to be honest, we're not dainty. Like we are strong ass Samoan women or Pasifika women. Like we can handle our own. And I feel like most of us are very like, independent and like we love to have a guy there, but we don't have to have one. Like it's just kind of that vibe, and that's just not the vibe. Like I've always felt like the vibe was just slightly different in the Bible Belt, where I needed to be super dainty and like, oh, hello, sir. And they'd be like, can I get that for you? And I'd be like, oh, yes. And like, and that's just not me. I'm like, nah, I got it. I can take it. Like, and whereas my mom would be like, Aynsley, be a lady. And I'm like, there's other ways to be a lady.
You know what's so funny about that though is because like in the Samoan culture, like I know this because like my partner's Samoan, and she shares to me that one of the things that you got to do as a Samoan woman is that you got to serve. Like everything you got to do, you got to serve. So what you're just sharing is what is the Samoan culture as a woman, like things like being submissive and serving. But the funny thing is, like the one thing I love about my partner is that she's very independent too. So as much as we're still together, like I get her to be like, yeah, you do your thing, like it's okay, because eventually when it comes to we're fully kind of devoted Christians. So when it comes to marriage, it's like, all right, once we're married, then obviously the things will change. Like that's when we'll start to say, okay, this is what we want in the relationship and this is what we don't want. I feel like a lot of people forget they don't. Like they say, okay, this is what I want in a relationship, but they don't actually state the things that they don't want. So like I know that that's something that she's been thinking about. Like, there's certain times where she's like, oh, I can do it on my own. But because she's in that culture, she has to be like, okay, okay, sweet, I'll do it. But I know, like, that's the thing I love about, like, you mentioning that, like, you Samoan women, and we're not mentioning that all Samoan women are like this, but I'm just saying, like you yourself, you're mentioning that, you're very independent, which I love. I feel like we need to have strong, proud, ladies out there that are able to be independent.
Well, and see, to me, that's like where things have gotten lost, especially like with my studies through the blog, is that like we've been told as Samoan women, because like, let me tell you, there was a culture shock when I had to go deal with these weddings. And my mom will tell you, because my mom, she grew up a strong Samoan. She's not traditional in the least. She speaks her mind. She is a Matai and she is the speaking chief. And so she speaks her mind half the time. She doesn't give two craps about what's going down. She will say it. And she will say it.
I love it.
What I said is that, like, what I've been told is that she will say it in Samoan and English, like, combined. No, depending on how mad she is what language comes out. And so that's what I was raised by. And so like when I went to Australia and they're like, oh, we have to like give the elders this stuff, or we have to go serve this stuff, or I'm reading, is it Growing Up in Samoa or something, which is by Margaret Mead. And it's like talking about like the women and stuff. I'm like, this is fishy, because there are pictures of Samoan women on the battlefield. I am being told that Samoan women played a huge part in the Mao movement. I am reading all these different things, and I'm like, colonization has done some massive shit to our women. And this is where we, as like the new ancestors, need to uproot that and decolonize our minds, because our women weren't timid and we weren't just over here doing sivas. We were actually part of the battle. And, like, and our ancestors did it with no shirts on. So, if they can do that, if those women can do that, we can at least stand up and tell I'm about to rant, because in the government right now,
go ahead.
In the government right now, there's a law in Samoa where a minimum of 5 seats have to be women. Why is that a law? Why is that a law? It shouldn't be like, I'm glad that that's there, but our women should be running for office in Samoa. We should be filling up parliament right now. We shouldn't be having these old crabby men. And I know someone called me out on my post saying like, you're saying all crabby men. And I'm like, they're like, you need to say some, because not all guy matais are bad. And I'm like, if you read it, you're not going to read it that way. You're just triggered. And so I'm just like very passionate about our women taking up space and like reading. Like, yes, maybe the traditions say this, but is it tradition or is it colonization? Those are the things we have to ask. Is it tradition or is it colonization? Because let me tell you, there's another aspect that's not women. That's like church leaders asking for money when they go to a wedding or a funeral. Dude, why are you there? Are you helping with the service? If you're just sitting there receiving envelopes, get the out, because that tradition comes from chiefs, matais getting the money so they can help the village. And I know that there are some preachers who are living well off than the people that are in the church. So do not go to a wedding if you're just going to sit your butt there and receive a stupid envelope and you're not going to actually do anything. Anyways, I'm sorry, but super passionate about all that.
Oh my gosh. Guys, all I'm going to say is she's speaking truth, man. Which, hey, it's totally fun, okay? Like, the one thing I love about this podcast, right, is that we're doing this for the people, right? We're wanting to kind of express, our emotions and our opinions. And guys, just remember, this is all our opinions, just so you guys know. Like, this is a opinion-based podcast. So as much as, yes, we do draw in the facts and stuff like that, and there is some moments where we do draw in a bit of opinions, which is totally fine. I feel like people need to hear, these things up, because let's be real here. I know that there are people out there probably listening to this podcast right now saying, sis, I'm on the same page as you. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm suffocating right now. And so, like, sis, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for being real. You had the choice not to, but you pulled through. You just said, you know what, I'm just going to say it. And you know what, I do believe, right, this is actually going to impact the one. I know that someone's impacted right now. Right, someone's getting impacted right now. Just saying. I'm just saying, right? So, thank you. Like, thank you so much. And just wanted to kind of give a big disclaimer out there, because I know that there may be some people being like, I don't know why you're talking about this, but at the end of the day, this is a opinion-based podcast. So, this is all based on discussions and having conversations, but I'm loving it. I'm loving this conversation. But I guess the next thing I want to kind of get into is you're talking about your upbringing, you're talking about you growing up in the States, and even just in terms of you being like a lot more of yourself and being like the real side, the real for real side of you, with your family, and then obviously differentiating with your Palangi friends. And so my next question to you is, like, how were you able to grow up in that, knowing that you didn't really know much about your culture, growing up in, like, whether it was in the States or in did you say Minnesota? Was it?
I grew up in Arkansas.
Arkansas. Yeah. I'm not really good at the US like language.
Okay.
I'll get there.
It's all good. It's all good.
And so like, my question to you is, like, how were you able to manage, knowing that you didn't know the culture in yourself? Like, how were you able to manage that growing up?
Oh, I was so naive. That's literally, it was blissful ignorance. like to be completely honest. It was nothing to, I was not self-conscious about it at all. Like, I literally felt like, this is how life is going to be. This is what life is supposed to be about. And so literally was just blissful ignorance, And so, but like I said, like growing up throughout my entire just like life, I mean, even as a second grader, like my grandma in Samoa, like there was just different things. Like I knew my mom was going to Samoa and I wanted her to take something to grandma. And like every time we had like a grandparents' day at school, like mom and dad did their best to have like grandparents here in the States, but it just didn't feel right to me. And I don't know why. I was a difficult child, but there's just things that just didn't connect with me on a, like I could say, on a spiritual level. And so I am grateful for all the people that have been my grandparents. I mean, I do have a grandma who's not biological, but she lives in Texas. And like, I do view her as my grandma, like as another grandma. But some of the other older people that have come, they just didn't, I don't know. I still connected with my grandma in Samoa. Like we would call her and like, there was just something about like, I didn't know what she was saying. She always just be like, Aynsley, God bless you. I love you. That's really all she could say. And then she would say something in Samoan and my mom would would translate it for us. And then, when we first would say hi, she would just laugh. It was like this most joyful, beautiful sound in the world. And I wish I had recorded it before she passed away. But like, just thinking about it, it's just like something that I always loved hearing when she would call. And there was just nobody else in the world that had that laugh really. And so, growing up and knowing that you had that connection with somebody you barely hung out with or spent time with, you're just blissfully ignorant.
Yeah. No, honestly, like, I'm not going to lie. I was in the same boat as you. That's why I was very curious to know, like, how did you deal with knowing that you're having this cultural battle within yourself, being like, oh, I was raised in the US, like I was raised in the States, but it's like, I don't really know much about my culture. And it's so funny because I'm starting to learn now within myself too, that there is some moments, even still to this day, like, I work as a well-being officer in a primary school, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I love it. Like I love like helping young people like in primary school. So kids from like, from 5 to 11. I'm focusing on like the real young.
You really are impacting the person.
Yeah. So I'm trying to help out the young people. Now the funny thing is, there was a teacher that came up to me, and she asked me, "Oh, hey, like Josh, is there any chance that you could, like, if you have any time to spare, to teach the kids how to do to do the haka for Multicultural Day, right?" And I actually said no. Like I ended up saying no, right? And it's crazy. Like this is actually crazy. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then I told her why. I told her why. I was like, number one, I already got a lot on my plate. Because obviously, for those that are listening to this, maybe, I don't know, in a year's time from this moment, we're actually doing this podcast through Zoom. And it's actually during the COVID pandemic. So due to the COVID pandemic, there's a lot of like what's it called, like boundaries that have been set in terms of our schools. So there's not actually much that I can do, which means I've got a lot more work to do, with the kids. So my heart first is well-being, right? That's my job. And then everything else is all add-on. So I actually had to say, I'm sorry, I actually have to say no, because, sometimes we actually have to say no, to things, I know that for us PIs, Pasifika people, we find it hard to say no.
We do.
Because we're always wanting to serve and help people. But one thing we do have to say is no for our well-being. So I had to say to the, to the lady who was asking me, she's like, like I said to her, I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't do it. Like my heart at the moment is on the people. Like, yes, my heart's on the culture of my people, but I need to focus more so on the task, like my job. And like, it's crazy because I know that some people may be listening, be like, oh, why don't you focus on culture? Why don't you just focus on teaching the kids? And it's like, I understand, like, I fully understand why some people may be feeling a bit, tension, being like, Josh, why didn't you focus on culture? And I would say the real reason why is because for me, well-being is the biggest thing that is what I'm wanting to focus on. Like my job is, I'm a well-being officer. Key word, well-being. So I focus on people's well-being. I focus on the kids. if they're feeling anxious, I focus on, targeting their anxiety and then helping them, giving them solutions. And I guess that's, in terms of our culture, that's probably like a tension that a lot of us cultural people would kind of focus on. Like, we're not focusing much on the well-being side of our life, but we're focusing more just on the cultural side. Is that something that you can relate to?
Oh, most definitely. We're always focused on culture or community, 100%. Like, I know my health has been shot half the time. Ever since I've left college after playing basketball, I have not been focused on my health or anything like that. And that's definitely something my mom went through as well. And I think that's everybody. I mean, I don't know how many times I can pass through different Pasifika people, like, being like, I'm going on a fitness journey or I'm doing meditation just to like get through life. And it's because we've got so many things going on. I mean, I feel like it's because we're doing culture, and then we got church, and then we got our community, and then we got our job, and not to even mention our family. I mean, how many other people have to deal with all that stuff?
Yeah.
It's great that you're able to. It's a good thing you've learned to say no, because I'm still learning it. I'm doing a terrible job at it.
It's actually so funny because I only just started learning. Learning. I think it was actually like last year. Like, I started to learn. There was a moment in my life where I started to burn out. Like, I started to feel really burnt out because I was saying yes to this and yes to that, and not actually learning to say no. And like, if I had to be real, like, it's a cultural thing that's been brought down. Like, it was actually a generational kind of saying that, like, we're just used to saying, yeah, sweet, we got you, like, we'll help you out. And like, this is where you actually have to manage and balance. Like, you need to balance the two, like moments where you serve and then moments where you serve, like, as in serve yourself. Like, people feel like, like you're being really selfish. It's like, no, you're not being selfish. I'm actually like being selfless by focusing on my own health and self-care so that I can help other people out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a true, like you said, a balance. And, there are some people who swing one way and say yes too much. There's people that are nice in the middle. And then there's people that say no way too much. So, because we all know that there are people in our community, they're just like, oh, I'm sure someone else can do it, and they don't care. And, and I sometimes do feel like the people that say no a lot and are just sitting on the sidelines are the ones who criticize the most as well. So, yeah, 100%.
So, I think that's the one thing I've learned. Especially in our culture too, like, we need to learn how to say yes, like at the moments where I'll help you out, and then there's moments where we have to say no. And like, honestly, like, I know it's very hard as a Pasifika person, or to be a Pacific Islander, to actually say no. Like if your parents tell you, right, they're like, oh, go wash the dishes, and you say no, then get ready for a big hiding, right? Yep. But I'm not mentioning like that. Like, what I'm actually mentioning is, like, when people are asking you, hey, like, is there any chance that you could help us out, and you know that you can't do it, like, that's the moment where you actually have to say no. Like, I guess what you need to do is let go of your ego, right? Let go of your pride and actually say no. I feel like there's great humility in actually saying no to certain things. As much as it doesn't feel, it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just a service to you, but it's a service to them, because they need 110 or 100% of you. And if you can't give that, then it's a disservice to them as well. So being able to say no is very important. Saying that to myself.
Yeah. Honestly, I actually have to constantly tell myself, like, Josh, like, just be okay to say no. Like, it's fine to say no to some things. Like, there's a lot of things that a lot of people ask me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm actually going to say no to this. And like, I say it with confidence, because I'm like, no, I'm actually learning how to say no. Because I feel like I put a post up on Instagram about it. I was like, oh, like, the no that you say today, like, you're actually saying yes to a better, there's actually going to be like a better opportunity, in the future that you're going to say yes to. So when you say, like, when you give a no out to someone out there, there's actually a yes out there, like a way better opportunity out there. But it's all about mindset. Like, a lot of people just think, oh, okay, because I'm saying no, then like, oh man, like, I don't get to help them out. It's like, no. There's going to be a better opportunity, because you're going to be 110, 20, 30% you know, like alert or focused on the task that you're wanting to achieve.
Yeah, I can attest to that, because when I first moved here, there was a time when I probably should have said no, because then an opportunity came along and I wish I had been able to take that opportunity versus the one I took.
Yeah.
And while I'm dealing with it right now and it's fine, it's just that now I'm like, I should have just said no and I would probably be happier, but I'm sticking it out and learn my lesson. So, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, guys, biggest takeaway for everyone that's listening to this or watching this on YouTube, learn to say no.
Just say
Pretty
no.
simple. Just learn. Get into the habit of just saying no. I'm not saying no to everything, all right? If someone's asking you out and you really like them, all right, I'm not telling you
yes,
to say no.
sakes.
Like, say yes, that's fine. But what I'm trying to say is that there's some moments where you just got to say no. And, like, obviously, you'd know straight away what I am talking about. But other than that, I want to get a lot more deeper into you, my sister. And the one thing I like to get the social guests to do is share a bit about, you know, what's the biggest setback that they've gone in their life, because I feel like that's kind of like the deeper root behind the reason why you do what you do and where you are today. So, my sister, is there any chance that you can possibly share to us your biggest setback that you've had in your life?
Like, in terms of like, just like learning the culture, or like
Anything. Just life,
anything.
I reckon.
Oh.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest?
The biggest setback in my life. I would say the biggest setback would probably be putting the world's expectation of what I'm supposed to do first versus what I actually want to do.
Oh, come on.
You know what? I think that's probably what it is. I think it is that, like, I fast forward through my education. So I made sure I got that bachelor degree. I made sure I got that master's degree. Made sure I got that job. And now that I have all that, I'm kind of just like, oof, this is not what I wanted to do. Like, I did not, like, my passion is not this. I like marketing. It's been able to give me some good skills and stuff like that, but I'm not passionate about it. And so, like, I had a mom who was very persistent. As you can tell, I talk about my mom a lot. She was just one of those people that has made a huge impact in my life.
Mums are the best.
Yes, they are.
Mums are the best, honestly.
I have a relationship with her that's, like, unlike any other. So,
come on.
Yeah, and so, yeah, you know, she wanted me to get that education. We had a plan when I was probably really young where it was like, get the degree, get the master's, get a good job. And so, you know, there's different things I wanted to do. And she was just like, you know, this is one message I do have for, like, especially young Pasifika people is go do what you want to do. Like, your parents are going to tell you to be a lawyer, be a doctor, be a nurse, be whatever is going to get the money. And I'm sorry, that's where you say no, because you're not going to be happy. Like, I enjoyed marketing for a few years and it was fun, but I'm not happy. I like my job, but I don't love my job, you know? And so when my mom right now, she's wanting me to get my doctorate, and I'm like, oh, like, let's hold the brakes, because I got 2 degrees that, like, are enjoyable and have given me opportunity, but I don't love them. Like, I wish I was doing something else. And so when she's like, get your doctorate, I'm like, okay, I'm going to say no right now, Mom. And I'm going to say, this is what I want to get it in. Because right now I wish I'd gone to, like, Hawaii or California. I wish I'd gone to those schools and gotten, like, a degree in, like, Polynesian history or Hawaiian history, that kind of stuff, to where I'd be able to actually do more in our community or be more of an advocate with the knowledge, because knowledge is, like, more valuable than money. And so, like, with the knowledge that you have, you're able to teach more people and make more of a difference than just sitting behind a desk at a 9 to 5 and you're just wondering, what are you doing with your life for 8 hours? So, you know, that's basically where I had to swerve. That was my setback. And so, like, my going forward was be like, what can I do right now that will allow me, when I'm not doing my 9 to 5 so I can pay the bills, that will fulfill me, like, spiritually, and, like, I'm going to be happy. And that was the blog, and, like, being able to connect with the community, because so to be able to, like, just connect with the community, be able to find people all over the world. Like, I have been so blessed to be, like, able to, I've connected with, like, Pasifika people in England. I've been able to connect Australia, New Zealand, Samoa, here in the States, I mean, I feel like I'm an island half the time on my own in Nashville. There's a few people dispersed here and there, but it's nothing like a community like in Utah or a community in Australia or a community in New Zealand. And so like being able to find my online community has been amazing. So like that's like where I've been able to like fulfill myself versus kind of just being miserable 9 to 5.
Yeah, wow, thank you. Like, thank you so much for sharing your setback, because like I know that there's people out there, like including myself, that are getting impacted by your story, because it's crazy. Because a lot of people, and this is the reason why I do this all the time, the reason why I get people to share their setback is purely because there are people out there that just watch you for you. Like they follow you for you. They only follow you for what they see. But the one thing that they don't really understand is who you are. They don't have that. They may not have the time. You may not have the time to actually share. But what they do get to have is a platform on the Impact Podcast Show to listen and be like, oh my gosh, like I really resonate with her. Like this is the reason why, you know, I love her, or this is the reason why I follow her. I truly follow her because of who she is. And that's the reason why I love getting people to share. So I'm so thankful that you shared your setback, because like what you just had mentioned is something that I had experienced, and that's the reason why I had let go. So for me, I end up like, because I was halfway through my degree, I'm studying bachelor's of social work. So I was going to be a social worker. But this, I'm telling you guys right now, COVID for me has probably been like one of the best things, or the best blessing that has happened in my life. It actually told me to stop, to stop saying yes, and to actually learn to say no. But also to be like, it's time for you to shift. Like I've got something planned for you, and we're going to shift. So I end up saying, all right, sweet, I'm actually going to let go of uni. That was hard because my goal was to, be the first one in the family to get a degree. But just like yourself, I end up saying to myself, I want to focus on something that I'm really passionate on. And so I said, all right, why do I need, and I'm not putting people out there that have degrees, but my heart was saying, okay, why do I need a degree to define me? Like, why do I need a degree to define me, right? Like, pretty simple. So that's why I'm saying, nah, sweet, I'm going to take a step back. And that's why, if you guys have been following my journey into personal branding, that is what I'm doing, right? I'm wanting to build my own brand. So I am the brand. Like, I do what I do. And I do the things that I'm passionate in. And, like, that's something that I see in you, sis. Like, I can see that what you're doing right now with your brand, you're actually doing things that you actually genuinely are passionate on. And as much as you went through a time of learning, in terms of marketing and wanting to have that 9 to 5 and getting that degree, you knew that there was actually a lot more installed for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, I have to also shout out my friends who I worked with almost 2 years ago, starting this journey, because if it wasn't for them, literally I think it's all been like a journey that's meant to be. Because if I hadn't landed that job working at called Flash Shop Network, I'm going to shout them out because I still have a soft spot in my heart for them.
Come on.
There's two girls who they're my best friends. We talk literally every day still. But they're the girls that like really prompted me to like dive more into my culture. I had my friend Shantara, she's Black, and she like is always talking about how her parents like made her learn her history and learn Black culture and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh, I wish my mom would have done that. And so, and so I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so she's just been like, Aynsley, do it yourself. Google is free. Like, just do it. So like, I was lucky to have an environment where we were very, we had gay people, we had Hispanic, we had Black, and like maybe there was just one representation of that community, but it was a very diverse community that I was getting to work with. And our boss was so nice in the fact that there were times where we just like paused and turned around and talked. Like we just talked during the work day, which in some places they don't let you do that. And so I had a boss who, yes, she made us work, and she was sometimes hard on us, but she was also very nice to where there was something going on. Like if it was an election year, we could talk about it. And so that literally set me off on my journey. And I'm grateful for those group of people, because without them, honestly, I don't know if SippingKoko would have been a thing. Because they're also the people I called. I literally I Snapchatted them. I said, guys, I have this idea. Well, what do you think? And they were just like, just do it, Aynsley. Just do it. And so, yeah. That's honestly, kind of like,
a lot of people don't realize the power of association.
Oh yeah.
People do not understand how powerful being associated with like-minded people really is. Like, and
Oh, it's
you've just
powerful.
stated that right now, like how powerful that is. You mentioned two people, like two who are now your best friends, like, you know,
Yeah.
the ones that you keep close to. I say this all the time to a lot of people, like if you want, I think it was a saying, it's like, oh, tell me your five friends, like the five friends that you hang out with, and I'll tell you where you're gonna go in 5 years. And
Yeah.
like looking at where you are now, like it hasn't even been 5 years yet. But like where
Yeah,
you
it's
are
almost,
now, if
yeah,
it
it'll be
wasn't for them,
4. Sorry.
yeah, if it wasn't for them, you know, helping you out along your journey, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
Mm-mm. No, because like we even started talking about wanting to start our own podcast a few years ago, but then I moved and like things like started happening, and so then I was just like here in Nashville, don't really have many friends, but like I was still kind of on my journey of learning the culture, and I was like, oh, there's so much stuff happening. I just want to talk about it, and like I would talk to my mom about it, and she was like, Ainsley, you don't know anything, and I'm like, yeah, not my fault. And so then I was just all this frustration and annoyance, and I was like, I gotta say something or else I'm gonna combust. And I also credit my dad, because he's always been like, Ainsley, you always want to say something, and your mom's gonna get on to you for having an opinion about something, and so just start a blog, or write, like it'd be like your online diary or something. So shout out to dad as well, because he's always encouraged me to start a blog, and so this is what happens too.
That's amazing, honestly. Like that's so amazing that you've actually utilized, you know, the tool of blogging to get your word out, and like right now you're actually getting a message out. And the one thing I love about you is that you're actually like you're probably more vocal than than people think, like because you're always
Oh yeah.
blogging. Obviously that's obviously like whether it's like written or typed, like you got to read it, right? But it's
Yeah.
like, man, like you only get to read with your eyes. You don't really get to hear exactly how she is. So once people start to listen, they're like, oh my gosh, I love her. Like, you know, I love the bubbliness about her and stuff like that, which is so cool. Like one thing I love about you know, the life that we're living now is there is so much access that you can get your word out. Like you can do it in written form, you can do it in
Mhm.
video form, you can do it in audio form, and that's the what I would say the true beauty behind podcasting is that people get to actually listen. They get to be like, oh my gosh, like I actually resonate with her.
Yeah.
I get to hear her out. I get to actually listen to the voice that I've been waiting for, like after so many years. Because obviously, like it's been a year since you started, you know, your brand. So
Yeah.
to see where you are now, actually voicing out after a year, I know that they're going to be your own people too, listening, being like, "Oh my gosh, I've finally been able to listen to her. Like, I want to talk to her."
Yeah, it's just I figured if I did a podcast or video, I probably wouldn't shut up. And so,
Hey,
I was like,
I'm on the same
blogging's gonna.
page. I am on the same page. Like the one thing I love about being a podcast host is that you get to just ask questions and like listen. Like for me, I
Mhm.
can talk for days. Like if you ask my partner, she will tell you, she's like, this guy can talk. My mom knows that for sure. My whole family knows that. But
My hope, yeah.
the one thing that is so humbling about doing a podcast and being a podcast host is that you're always focusing on the guest. And that's what I love. I'm like, I want to hear your story. And as much as I do talk a lot, even my mates know that. They're like, oh my gosh, you talk so much. But like I've learned now through podcasting that like I just want to listen. Like I want to listen to
Yeah.
you, you know, and like it's cool. It's cool to see that you did have a passion to get into podcasting, but it's cool that you also focused on blogging. And I
Yeah.
guess my question to you is, and this is going to transition into our next, you know, segment or stage of the
Mhm.
conversation or our podcast, is what actually got you into podcast? I mean, sorry, on blogging, like.
So I actually wanted to be a journalist when I was younger. And so that's kind of like where it prompted me was I wanted to do journalism because my auntie on my dad's side, she was a journalist. And so I was like, oh, well, there's a lot of, because she got to interview like the Lord of the Rings cast back in the day. And I was like, oh, she
Cool.
got to do that. So I want to do that. And so like, I wanted to do that, but also during the time that I was making that decision, the war in Iraq was happening. And so my mom saw that and was like, if you're going into journalism, you don't know if they're going to send you to like a war zone. And I'm like, so like it's getting the message out. And so that's probably where it all started. And then it's basically just been like, I enjoy writing. I am not always grammatically correct. I spout off things because I type how I talk. And so, but it also like helps me keep my message concise versus like while I'm talking, I'm just going to ramble and go off here and go off there.
100%.
Yeah. And so blogging has been able to like center me and like write it out and view what I'm writing. And I just kind of like the medium of being able to type it out. And I don't know, it's just kind of therapeutical in a way too. I always kept diaries as a kid. They now travel with me because Lord knows what's all in them, and I don't want kids to find them. And so, you know, it's just stuff that I've done since I was a kid to be able to like, because I guess I'm just going to lay this out there. When I was younger, there's just a lot I was going through. And so I would get frustrated and like just my dad was just like, okay, here, just write it out and you'll feel better. And so that's what I started to do. And that's why blogging is kind of the thing I do now, because when I write it out, I feel just a little bit better and it's out of my mind and it can go.
Come on. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because it's cool because like I know like when I was learning when I was studying social work, like, you know, we get taught like, you know, anxiety, like, and how to, you know, bring solutions and how to work with people that are going through, you know, what you're going through at a young age. And like, I love that, you know, I love to learn things that will be able to help people and have a skill set. And I one of the things that we learned was, journaling. Like journaling is like another way. And it's so funny. People don't realize there is so many ways to actually get your emotions out. It can be through blogging. It could like what you're doing right now. It can be through journaling. Like one thing that I do is I do a voice memo because I talk like, and I like listening to myself in terms of like how I'm feeling. What I'll do is I'll use a voice recorder on my phone. So I'll have my phone and be like, you know, if I was really angry, I'd be like, man, I hate this, I hate that. I wasn't really much of the typing type of person or writing. Like, honestly, my handwriting is like probably worse than a doctor's. So for me, I was like, like at the end of the day, I wanted to focus on the thing that would actually get me out there, which is obviously doing the voice recording. And then obviously through there, I started to transition into podcasting because I was able to voice out my opinions. And for you ended up going through the stage of journaling. And like, it's crazy to see now that you transitioned from your own journaling into your own diary and all your emotion to actually going out there being, you know what, I can actually help people. Like I can actually help other people out there by blogging. Yeah. And I know that there are a lot of women out there that are so keen on blogging, but they're having some sort of tension. And so what would you say for those out there, or like the women out there, it may not be blogging, it may be like a podcast, or maybe, I don't know, doing vlogs, like whatever they're going through right now. What would you say for you was like the secret sauce or the secret ingredient to actually you getting into blogging?
Just do it. Like, honestly, I'm just saying, like, it sounds so cliche to say that, but it's just like, just do it. Like, if you're worried, like, if people aren't going to read it, or if you're worried about, like, is my message good enough? Somebody, like, this podcast here, this is impact one person. If you can just do that, it will ripple effect. Like, that's all you have to do. Like, when I started SippingKoko, I had no idea what was going to happen to it. Like, I literally, like I said, I messaged my friends and I was just like, hey, I really want to do this. What do you think of this name? What do you think of this logo? Like, get your core friends, get the people that know who you are, talk to them about it. They'll support you no matter what. And you'll have that one friend that's literally just going to be like, girl, just fucking do it. Yeah. Like, that's literally what they're going to say to you. Because that's what my friend said to me. She was just like, Aynsley, just fucking do it. Like, oh my gosh. And so I did it. It's an easy sign up. If you like, you can easily just walk through the sign up and just start writing. Like, just write it out. Just get your word out there and, like, you know, share it. I, like, for the longest time, I was just like, and share other people's stuff. That's like what's helped me too. And that's like what you got to do to to create your community is share other people's stuff. Because if you're just sharing your stuff, it doesn't really resonate sometimes. But if you share other people's stories, you're able to like do more, I feel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just go out there and do it. Do not let the doubt stop you from being the best self that you can be.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't realize that the only person that's actually stopping them from actually doing it is themselves. It's actually you. And like they're actually putting the lid on. Like they're putting the lid on themselves, saying, I don't know if I can do it. Like that was me when I started this podcast. Like I was going through a lot of doubt. I'm like, oh, I'm not too sure if I should do it. And I'm telling you guys right now, if I did not start it back last year, 2019, in August, at the end of August, like I'm telling you guys right now, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at all the people's lives. Like I wouldn't even met you, sis. Like I wouldn't have met you if I didn't start it. Like because that's how we
just
connected.
Your profile. Yeah, just your profile. You can see all the people that you've been able to meet, which is astounding. That's awesome.
Yeah, like people don't realize how much of a blessing there is on the other side. The only thing that is stopping them is them.
Yeah, and honestly, like I like just can't, like when I look back and think about it, I'm like, I don't know what I was starting. I like even to this day, you really just don't know what's going to happen. And you will have like days where you still doubt yourself and you're like, oh, I missed, like, y'all, it's August and I still haven't written a blog for August. Like there's just like a lot of things where you're just kind of like, oh, I should have been doing this. But you got to remember, this is your platform. Yeah. And like, if people want to follow you, they'll follow you. And if they don't, that's fine too. Like you don't need astounding numbers to like create an impactful message or to be that person for other people.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the reason why we're focusing on the one. Like that's the main reason why we're just wanting to like impact the one, because not only is it simple, but it's something that a lot of people take for granted. Like they take for granted, like, I'm wanting to inspire the many, I want to inspire the nations. But then the question I'd ask them is like, how is your neighbor going? You know, is it like, you know, are you actually looking after the people beside you? Because while there's people out there wanting to be, and this is like my heart behind it, like the reason why I wanted that to be the mission is because we have so many people out there wanting to be like inspirational leaders. They want to be, you know, motivational speakers, which by all means I'm like, yes, do it, right? But I guess the first person that you actually have to impact and inspire and to motivate is the people around you. Like, are you like who are you impacting right now? Like, while you're not in the glory stage, where are you? Like, are you like in terms of your story stage? Like, are you building? Like, how are you building your story to get to where you are right now? Because just like everyone else in the world that are successful, they always started with the one. Like, they ended up starting off with doing one thing, one step at a time. So honestly, like this is the thing. This is the reason why I wanted to get you on here, because like I love the way that you express your emotions. And the good thing is I'm learning a lot about you. And this is actually the first time, I don't know, I said it before, this is actually the first time we actually met. And I feel like I learned so much about you in the space of an hour than probably some of your own people, like as in your own family.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about our community, I feel like, is that we connect like this, but it's almost like we've all known each other for a long time, too, you know?
Honestly, I think it's that relatability.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been so wonderful. And when I meet a Pasifika person, when they're just like, oh, and I'm like, you don't know what you're missing out. Like, if you don't have that instant connection with some Pasifika people, I'm just like, oh, man, you're missing out on some like, 100%. Awesome stuff that's going on.
Even that, I love that you mentioned, like, because that's a shift. Like, that's a shift in perspective. Like, there are some people out there that will get offended and be like, oh my gosh, like you don't know me. But for us, we're like, no, you're actually missing out. I've got a lot in here. And it's not in, like, you're not boasting or you're not doing it in a cocky way. You're just saying out of confidence, like, there's a lot in me. There's a lot of value that I could bring. There's a lot of happiness. There's a lot of joy that I can bring. But because of your ego, or because, like, you're not wanting to know more about me, then it's like, you're actually missing out.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, like, I just feel like, I guess I assume anytime I meet someone who's like Islander that we would all just, I don't know, because like most of the people I meet, we all automatically connect. Like I don't, and so like when somebody's not like that, I'm like, who raised you, or what vibes were you coming out of? Like, like I'm just automatically ready to hug and be like, oh, hey, like, how's it going? Like, so but that's also my personality too. So
No, 100%. And I think, like, for those out there that are like that, like, that are, like, really kind of, self-centered or being like, oh, no, it's okay, like, very kind of introverted or shy. I think one thing I've learned through my life is that, like, it's always good to just stay curious. It's always good to just, instead of thinking that you know what's going on, ask questions. Like,
oh, yeah.
I was listening to a podcast recently, and it's like there was like a certain doctor who ended up asking certain questions. Oh yeah, it was Craig Rochelle. So Craig Rochelle is in the States. One of the pastors leading I think Life Church, and he was sharing that he went to the doctors, and funny enough, this doctor was asking like 21 odd questions, but he knew the answer at the third. At the third question, he already knew the answer, but he was asking so much questions. And so Craig was saying, okay, so like, why don't you just stop there? He's like, oh, because I know that there's a lot more that I can get. And it's like always wanting to look for confirmations. And so that's the reason why I always ask questions. I'm always asking questions to certain people, being like, yeah, I think I'm going to ask 21 questions. So then I know that I'm actually like 120% right. Like, I don't want to be wrong, like, at the end by saying something, being like, judging them, saying, it's because of this. It's like, well, maybe it might be, but the good thing is I'm asking questions.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, especially as a host. I mean, that's a great thing to have, a great skill to have.
Yeah, 100%. And I think if people understood the shoes that you would have to feel when it becomes, when you are a podcast host, you need a lot of this, you need a lot of listening, and a lot of less of this. Yeah, less
well,
of.
You gotta have a little bit of that too.
Yeah. 100. You need to actually talk. But yeah, I guess I want to start kind of wrapping up this podcast, and obviously the main purpose that I love to share with people out there is that we want to focus on the who first before the do. So we want to focus on who you are as a person, as a special guest, jumping on here. But now what we're going to do, knowing that people know who you are, we're going to talk more about your brand. I'm so excited to talk about this within like the next 10 minutes or so to wrap up this podcast. But sister, can you kind of share a bit about your story on your brand? Like, could you kind of share a bit about how that started up?
Yeah. So like I had mentioned before, I was talking to my friends about starting a blog, and I always felt like there's just not a lot of, there's some blogs out there that aren't really talking about some of the like the touchy issues in the Pasifika community. Like, there's just some things some people aren't talking about. They're a little miffed about it, but they're not really like opening up the conversation. And so like, I always, the phrase, oh, we got the tea, or like this tea is popping, and that kind of thing. And I was like, I love that. Like, I love that. And so I was like, I've got to find a way to do like a Pasifika version of it. And to me, it was Koko because of Samoan cocoa. And so I was like, SippingKoko, why not? And so that's kind of like where it all like came around to. It was like, I've got the cocoa.
I'm telling you this. I've never seen a savage brand like your brand. I'm telling you, it is so savage. Because I was reading it, and like, because like me and my partner, like we're all about that tea, like all about having, tea talks. And it's funny because a lot of the tea talks that we have isn't actually, like, we don't have a lot of beef against each other, but there's a lot of beef that like have been told by us. So someone's probably told us some beef, and we're like, all right, like, instead of us going to someone else that we know that's going to gossip and talk about it to someone else, like, we'll talk together and like actually have a conversation about it and learn. There's actually, people don't realize there's actually a lot to learn if you have the conversation with someone that will actually tell you, okay, what can we learn by it? Like, instead of being judgmental and pointing people the finger and saying, that's the reason why I shouldn't be like them. It's like, no, what can we learn from the situation? So we do that all the time. Like, just being real out there. Like, we always talk about, someone's told us their story. We're like, all right, cool. Like, we'll share it together and be like, okay, like, obviously we always keep it, very confidential within ourselves. That's the kind of the maturity side that we have. But I started to learn, like, one thing that we always talk about is like, oh, I have tea. Like, I've got some tea. And she's like, okay, sweet. We've got some tea. Yeah. And like, that's the thing I love about your concept behind your brand. It's like, that's pretty much what it is. And I love it, like, because it's that's what I said. It's very savage. Like,
Yeah.
if like, especially in the Pasifika community, like, they know what tea. They, like, if you say, oh yeah, like, let's have a coffee, like, you know straight away what coffee is about.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, I also created because I wanted to be unapologetic for what I had to say. I didn't ever want to go on there and be like, oh, I am sorry that I said this. I just wanted to be like, this is SippingKoko. If you don't like it, you don't have to read it. This is my opinion. And I'm going to be harsh about it and some stuff, you know? And I mean, starting out, a lot of it was all issue based. Like, it was all like, don't talk about being plastic. Oh, wow, somebody's being racist, and like just different things. And, you know, I kind of softened up when it came around like February and March, because I was super excited about, like, I guess it was also kind of savage on my part, because like another thing that I talked about like in February was like, why are Polynesian men not wanting to date our women? Obviously, you are in a very nice Polynesian relationship, but like, why are some of our men like being rude and assholes to our women? It's kind of like a concept that like the Black community deals with as well. And so that was like part of it all, because we always support the Polynesian man, and we always like, and I know I'm talking to one right now, but we always support them. We always hype them up. We're always like, oh, look what he's doing. Look what that's going on. But we never hype up our women, like hardly ever at all. Like, we're always in the background serving and being timid, and we're not timid women. If you know a Polynesian woman, we're all pretty laughing, loud, and everything like that. So it's yep. So like, it's just something that I've been like, why can't we just be that? Like why can't we just be our true selves, and our men love us for it? And why aren't we making movies about this? Like, I would love to see a Pasifika like romance movie. Like, I want Pasifika the Notebook, you know? Like, I'm a hopeless romantic at heart, and so it's just like one of those things where SippingKoko gave me the platform to be savage, and to also like call out the shit that's going on in our community or to our community. So just like what I have on today is my loud, proud, hyena laughing brown woman, because somebody who was an editor for a used to be prominent Pasifika magazine, called out the cis show and was like saying all these things, and I'm like, girl, don't you know that they're making history here? Like, there's no need for this at all. Like, you are taking away queen's crowns when you should just be in like, way to go, you know? So yeah.
No, I love it. Like, I love what you're doing, and like, this is the thing. I know that a lot of people may see your things, like the things that you do, very offensive. And for me, I'm always like, just the first thing I'll be questioning to them is like, where's your heart at? Like, you know, how are you going? Because for me, I'm always curious, right? I'm always like, even to like, I know that in this season, like, I know that a lot of people have been talking about the Save Our Children, like, you know, how that's been a big thing, like, you know, you know, trafficking, like human trafficking, but even like child trafficking, certain things like that. I'm very curious about that. I'm always like just listening and just asking certain questions. Like, I don't know everything. Like, I don't know everything in the world, but it's cool to just stay curious. And I know that that's something that you're doing. Like, you're always like, oh man, like, honestly, like, why? You know, instead of you saying this is the reason why, it's like, why is it that men, you know, like us, like, you know, like Polynesian men, why aren't we, you know, accepting our own women? And funny enough that you say that, I feel like this is a great time for me to share this, because I know that this will help you out. Like, for me, I remember, like my first partner, like when I was growing up, she was Tongan, right? And then my second one was Samoan. And then after that one, I was like, nah, I'm not going to date any like, Pasifika woman. I was like, nah, stuff that. And funny enough, it wasn't her, it was actually me. Like, it wasn't them, it was actually me. I started to place that in myself, and then, you know, I ended up dating like a Palangi woman, and then that didn't go too well. And then out of nowhere, I knew straight away. I told myself, I was like, I'm never going to date a poly woman at all.
You never say never.
And then guess what? Like, legit, like a year later, I ended up dating a Samoan woman, and honestly, like as much as like it's the cultural side of things. Like her, like being in my life has completely changed. The way I see things and the way I am right now. Like, and she would never allow me to say that to her, but I'm gonna say this right now. Like I am so grateful to have her in my life, but. For me, I'm probably the fair few. Like I'm probably the fair few minorities that will actually date my own kind. In terms of like the Pasifika people. But yeah, I'm so grateful that you shared that because that really made me. It kind of cemented in me that like I'm on the right track. Like I love it. Like
yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm out there bashing anybody that's outside of our community dating our men, but it's just like, and there's like a ton of Polynesian Pasifika couples like Avi, but it's just, when you see as people like start climbing, this is my thing that I've noticed most, as men, Pasifika men start getting into like rugby and they start climbing that rugby ladder, their choice of women start to get wider.
That's so true. That is actually so true. She's not lying on that one.
What's happening now? Like I did an unofficial like study of Pasifika like men like rugby players because I was like, is this a thing? And my unofficial study, like I just pulled random dudes who are in the World Rugby Cup and like just stalked their socials. And then nobody's like out there explicitly saying like someone's Caucasian or Balangi. But I was like, I think there was probably like 20 or 10% of men were dating someone that was a person of color or at least Pasifika. Out of the 20 men I pulled, 10%, I think, or 20. It's in my blog. There's a blog where I put it out there. But it's just like, you look at all the guys who are actors or who are rugby players or super big, none of them are dating, hardly any of them are dating, are women. And I truly believe it's because I think we're lower class. When, I'm sorry, I got a bachelor's and a master's, and I got a pretty dang paying job. So... But that's just hyping my own self up so I don't feel bad about being single.
I'll tell you, cool. Like, I just love that you're very transparent and very real. Like, I know that there are probably women out there that are on the same page as you. They're probably saying the same thing. Like why aren't they coming to us? And so, yeah, it's good. I'm so grateful that you're sharing this. And I guess just to, finish up this podcast, the one thing I want to ask about you is what's the vision? What's the vision behind SippingKoko? Like, what is the big vision that you want? Like, when it comes to the time where you're on your deathbed, laying down, being like, "Oh snap! Like this is it's been successful. I'm finally there." What is that? Like, what is the vision behind?
So I actually recently had somebody who was like, "Are you going to turn this into like a magazine or like something like that?" And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it, but I guess I will. My thing is like, I really just want to uplift Pasifika stories. Like, I am so passionate about story. Like when Sis came out, for a good solid week, I'm pretty sure that's the only content I posted about. And I'm like, I'm sure people are sick of me talking about this. But it's just because I want people to know, like, we have Entertainment Magazine or like other entities, platforms where they're talking about movies being made by Palungis, and so I want that for our community. I want there to be a space where the latest news or the latest topics are being discussed. And I know I'm not the only one that wants that. I know there's a magazine here in the U.S. that's about to launch, Pasifika, or I've been saying Pasifika all night, Pacific U.S. magazine. They're about to launch, and I was able to write for them. And so they're doing stuff like that right now. But my vision would be something similar, or just being able to make it bigger where I have more writers on the blog, and it's more of a website for like a hub of like where everybody can come and discuss ideas. Because I think that's what we're missing in our community, Like we have people who report on stuff, but nobody is like actually asking the community, like, let's discuss this. Like, Why is this a tradition? Why is this happening? Does it have to continue to happen? Can we make a new tradition, So I want there to be a space where people can have conversations with each other rather than being told.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm so excited. Yeah. Like I want that to happen now. Like that's how That is so amazing. I know even that, like, I know people here, like here in Australia, that would love to see that. And especially for the women too. I know that there's a lot of women that I know that would love to get in touch, like get on board with that. Like, that's amazing. That is really, really, really good.
That's another reason why I'm trying. Like, I feel like living here in the U.S. is like limiting me in a way. I guess that's one of my limitations. I should have said that earlier, but I don't have an overcomer yet. But it's just like, I feel limited here because I can't really like physically connect with those people. And like, while virtual is great, I would love to just actually sit down and have a coffee and be like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, let's get this done and plan it and do it today. Whereas like over virtual, you're kind of just like, you know, and it's like, it's not the same, but I'm glad it's there. Like, I'm happy to have it.
Yeah. No, I'm so thankful, sis. Like, I'm really enjoying this like conversation. I know that we can go for like hours and hours, which is so cool.
Two people
like,
that are talkers.
Yes, it's like you actually have two like talkers on here, like having conversation. But the good thing is, like, I do have a set limit on here, so we're gonna start wrapping up this podcast. Thank you so much. Honestly, I'm so grateful that you took out your time to jump on. I know that. You know, I think it's, I don't know, maybe 8 o'clock, 8:30ish, or roughly around there. Yeah. So and it's 11, or I think it's 11:30ish. Yeah, like AM in the morning. So we're gonna start wrapping up this podcast. And I guess the last thing that I like to do, and I like to do this because I want to really have people to finish off with a bang. And for those that are listening to be impacted, one thing I get the special guest to do is have an opportunity to share a bit of encouragement. And so it can be something on your heart or just something that we just had a discussion on. But yes, is there any chance that you can possibly share a bit of encouragement for those that are listening and watching?
Yeah, I would say if you are interested in actually doing something like this, like a podcast, a blog, a vlog, or anything, just go and do it. I've said this multiple times. Our community does not have a quota. We need to not think, if you are watching like Fresh, or if you're watching whatever entity is coming out, that's not it. We can have more Fresh TV, or we can have more other things. Those people doing that, that's great. But we need more. There's no quota of Pasifika elements or creatives out there. Just because we have a Jason Momoa or a The Rock Johnson, we need more. So go out there and do it, because we need you to do it. And that's like another reason why I did SippingKoko, is because, there are other blogs out there that are larger than mine, but there's no quota. There's no like one person. You don't see Palangi people out there being like, oh, we got Benedict Cumberbatch. That's the only Brit we need, So we need more people from the US, from all over, from Australia, New Zealand, all over, throwing creative stuff out there, or their message, being politicians, being business people, just doing it all. So that's my message, is like, go do your passion and be great at it.
Come on. I think I heard this 2 years ago. But yeah, guys, you heard it here first from SippingKoko. You heard it from here first. But yeah, sis, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I've been encouraged, I've been impacted, and I know that there are people out there being impacted. But yeah, that is all that we got. So what's the best way that people can connect with you, for those out there that want to connect?
Yeah, so you can follow my Instagram. I'm more active on there. I do have a Facebook and Twitter. It's all at SippingKoko. And then if you need to email me, I have an email that's sippingkoko@gmail.com. And then my blog is also linked in my bio on Instagram, or I think sippingkoko.com is now where you can go.
Yeah,
so,
sweet.
Those are all the things.
Yeah. So for those that are watching this on our YouTube platform, it'll be down in the links down below. But if you're like tuning through this podcast through Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just go onto our Instagram. We will be following her on our Instagram page at the Impact Podcast Show. And so yeah, you guys can click on there, and then you have all the information there, and that'll be cool. But other than that, that is all that we got. Sis, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone that has watched and listened to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. COVID hasn't allowed me to do much, but this has been like a highlight for a Friday night. So I'm so like pumped. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for those who are listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.